just the thing for you. Ancestors watch over you. Greetings.
Keep it real.
That's too much already. That's That's too much already.
well. Walk with the earth.
That's still recharging.
Greetings. I've been expecting. With my back.
I'm out of range. I need to get closer. It's too far away. fool.
testing my patience.
The clutter of the city spreads to the lowliest stars.
I have business to attend to. What brings you here? Hail.
That's still recharging. That spell isn't ready.
Salarian science smothered in idiom about a stimulating a scanning for iridium. One tail holds every mind in thrall.
I can't cast that yet.
Whatever uniform you wear, you can fight like a Krogan, run like a leopard, but you'll never be better than Commander Shepard.
Hail.
No matter what scars you bear, whatever uniform you wear, you can fight like a Krogan, run like a leopard, but you'll never be better than Commander Shepard. You can fight like a Krogan, run like a leopard, but you'll never be better than
May
Commander
be eternal.
Shepard. You can fight like a Krogan, run like a leopard, but you'll never be better than Commander Shepard.
I'm out of range.
Never be better than Commander Shepard.
That's still recharging.
Never be better than Commander Shepard.
Greetings.
That spell isn't ready. I can't cast that yet. That's still recharging. That spell isn't ready. That's still recharging. I can't cast that yet. That spell isn't ready yet. That's still recharging. That spell isn't ready yet. That's still recharging. Oh.
Be careful. Peace, friend.
Looking for something
Well
special?
met. Goodbye.
Just the thing for you. Goodbye.
The winds guide you.
Cast out yet.
Well met. Be careful.
That steam recharge in. that yet.
collector station of Burning Crusade, and we came from.
Just introduce yourselves to the chat and explain your history with the game leading up to where we are today.
But got a few glad titles on Endless, and just play a lot of Warrior Druid and a lot of Warrior, and yeah, just love Arena really.
Hell yeah, you know, Gladiator multiple times on these private servers. Just I mean, you live it, man. You live it. You're a gamer, man.
It's got to be done.
Yeah, it's got to be done. So yeah. Anyway, we can hit him with more cringe questions, but we'll try to just get right into the meat and potatoes of this.
I only came for the cringe questions, though.
Okay, you want a cringe question? I
No,
usually.
I'm kidding.
I'll ask you one, bro. Favorite snack
go on.
Favorite snack, bro. Favorite snack while gaming.
I actually think beef jerky is actually really good. It's kind of filling, and it gives you like protein that you're missing out on and shit about just gaming the whole time.
It only cost $1 million.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually super expensive.
It is. To build on that, what flavor of beef jerky though? And does it for?
It's gotta be something hot.
Yeah.
It's gotta be spicy. Yeah.
I feel like beef jerky is insane. It is definitely very delicious. Okay. Well, a lot to get through here, so maybe we can just start with class changes. Major class changes. Chat, we're gonna need your help on this one too, because there's not a whole lot of production value that goes into this. Like, you know, we kind of freestyle it a little bit here. So let's all think together what the major class changes are from classic moving into TBC. Think 51 talents. Think just like mechanics if they move it all. Anybody want to kick us off?
Sure, yeah. I mean, overall, you know, I'll say that from the start, I haven't played Classic, but I mean, I haven't played Classic WoW. I've played it in the past, but not at like a competent level, right? But so there might be something I miss here and there. But overall, its functionality is mostly the same. There's some additional spells like Spell Reflect, which is useful in PvP, and some PvE scenarios. There's a couple new abilities like Devastate for Prout Warriors. It just straight replaces Thunder Armor, so you actually have like an ability, like it's basically Thunder Armor that just deals damage. Slam gives its cast time boost back to like what it was in beta, so it's actually like a useful ability again. You use it as Arms Warrior. And there's other kind of 41 point. Most of the 41 point talents are kind of just like passive. They're like the Arms one is like only good for PvP. This Victory Rush is kind of just like a leveling spell. Rampage is a new ability for Fury. It just gives you attack power for like 30 seconds. So it's just something you passively keep up. It's not like anything really exciting. Overall, though, it's pretty similar to Classic. I mean, you get like Commanding Shot as well. It gives you health, so you can have like 2 Warrior Shots now.
That's true.
But I mean, there's not much change. There's only a few additional things, and some functionalities kind of get increased and improved and stuff like that. A lot of quality of life stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned Rampage. Yeah, that one was probably the least exciting out of them. How interesting is Endless Rage to you as a warrior? Maybe to you, Ozzy. I always hear that this is like garbage for PvP, but there's got to be more to the story than. Basically, it's the 41 point down. Sorry, where you generate 25% more rage from damage dealt.
Nah, Endless Rage is actually really good for warriors, because there's sometimes where you'll be playing a combo like Holy Pala Warrior, and you might be on the Holy Pala a lot, and you're not actually getting rage from anyone hitting you. So actually getting the extra rage from your attacks is really good, because you can do like much more damage, because you actually have to double suppress instead of just like standing there using your auto attack. And I think it's pretty huge.
I mean, isn't it like basically required after like the first season? Like, if you ever want to kill anyone, like when people start getting health and resilience and armor, like especially with like this cloth, you start getting the bonus armor pieces.
Yeah, I think it's. I pretty much always play with this talent. I know I've never ever played without it.
Well, that goes. I was trusting the chat a little bit too much. I was streaming a few of it, and now like, they're making fun of me, like, "Yo, you have endless. What are you doing?"
It's actually really good. Like, especially like when you typically don't want to focus the warrior in PvP, right? Because you're just giving them free rage. Like,
and
you have
as
to
well.
sometimes. Yeah, exactly. Like.
Yeah. Okay. Well, see. So when you're playing your main, right? Like with Warrior Druid, you're playing with this most of the time, Ozzy? Like all seasons?
Yeah, always. If I play Yeah. All seasons. Like if I play Warrior Druid, I'll use this, and then if I play with a Shaman, then I won't get it. I'll get Flurry, and I lose out on the Endless Rage. But if I play Warrior Druid, I always use the Endless Rage.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, it's a really good talent then, I guess, if it's that a crucial.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah.
Huge. Okay, and then you said
I
Devastate.
pretty much say it's required. Like, if you want a PvP at a level where you're gonna kill people for sure.
You said Devastate like literally replaces Sunder Armor, like you never would use Sunder Armor.
Yeah, it's basically just a Sunder Armor that does damage. So it just straight replaces Sunder Armor. You could like technically keep Sunder Armor if you wanted to be cheeky, because Sunder Armor does no damage. So you can have a macro that like Sunder Armor stop attack. You can put Sunder Armor threat on sheeps, for example. That's something you can do. And you can do that in Classic right now as well, right? But yeah, but this is basically just like you're never Sunder Arming anything except for in that scenario. That's the only scenario where you use Sunder Armor. Every other scenario is just Devastate. It's just strictly better everywhere.
Gotcha. Taking a look at some of these other talents too. Second Wind is new and pretty impactful, at least on the PvP side thing. Ozzy, like how, Second Wind, I'll read it. Whenever you are struck by a stun or immobilize effect, you will gain 10 rage. Well, it looks like it's 20. When it's fully ranked up, and 10% of your total health over 10 seconds. Is this really an important talent for you on the PvP side of things?
Yeah, it's pretty good, especially when you're playing classes like rogues who are stunning you all the time, or even actually a mage. So if the mage gets a frostbite or something for a blizzard, you actually regen off that as well, and you just get quite a lot of health back from quite a few classes. I think that's, if you're playing Warrior Druid, it's definitely a talent you want to take.
Yeah, gotcha. I mean, you're sitting in a ton of immobilizes as a warrior, so that's got to be procking quite a bit. I saw you play this sick build, bro, when you went double DPS with Rogue and you went Last Stand and, your Battle Master, and the second one was just pumping you, man. That was so fun to watch. I don't know if it's a real build or not, but yeah, that was pretty hype. Let's see here. So another skill that comes to mind is Intervene. This is kind of like an intercept and D-stance. And you can make sick plays with it. I'll try to pull it up on the DB. Are there PvE applications too? Let's talk about Intervene for a second.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like an additional mobility thing. It's very strong, like you can always, it's an extra thing to get somewhere you need to go. Especially just intercept combat with a friendly target, obviously don't stun them. The usual application of this is just to get somewhere faster. It also has a functionality where it redirects an auto attack or a ranged attack from the target to you. So say somebody pulls threat, you can always intervene and they'll survive a hit. Or you can intervene the other tank if they're low health or something, and they can survive until they get healed. Or it's mostly used for somebody pulls threat and you intervene to them and taunt the mob during the intervene so that they don't die, right? And it just has the added functionality as well as it eats the charge, the one hit as well, which I'm sure Azzy knows about. For you can always intervene and get like kidney shots and stuff off your healer.
Yeah.
Or when Ozzy says "Veen the blind," right? He always gets so excited with that. It's pretty sick, though. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. It's much more like required in PvP than PvE. Like in PvP, it's like games are won and lost through either using your blind too early, it's on cooldown for some reason, or just leaning too early or too late. Like games are won and lost on intervening PvP. Like it's really big.
Yeah. It's very like minor application in PvE. It's more just like an additional functionality out there, versus like PvP. It's massive. It's one of your main gains from Classic to PvC.
It's one of those really important gap closers. When I watch you play, Ozzy, it looks like you're just like ping-ponging around like crazy to your teammate, to the enemy. It's this constant like ebb and flow of just like just charging, intercept, intervene. Does it share cooldown with intercept?
No, it doesn't. No.
Wow, so you have 3 independent gap closers. That's nasty.
And also it's their mobility too.
Yeah.
That's how they get. That's why they have. They say there's lack of mobility as a warrior, but they have those.
Yeah, but you use the intervene to your advantage sometimes. So if the druid is actually like on the target with a clone, for example, then I'll actually intervene my druid so I'm on top of the target, and then I still got the intercept instead of like in case he gets away. So I'm making the most of the intervene. Like you can actually use it offensively sometimes in that sense to like get a good position on someone.
I see. That's nice. another one, you know, big. I mean, Warriors crossbeat is another sort of weakness. No spell reflection, which basically 10-second cooldown. You reflect the next spell cast on you. I've had a hard time because I'm a new warrior. I've been trying to learn it as well. Getting value out of this. I feel like I never have enough rage for it when I swap. When I use it. I mean, how good is spell reflect in your mind, Ozzy?
It's pretty good, yeah. But like, I think the more you play warrior, the more you learn when it's good and when it's not good. So if a druid's going to clone you, sometimes I'll just let him clone me because I've got like 90 rage, and I think, right, when I get out of this clone, I'm going to do so much pressure. It's actually worth not reflecting every now and then. And if you save up rage in battle stands and you reflect, that won't actually take all of your rage. Unlike if you're in berserker stance and you reflect, for example. So there are like little ways around it, so you can just keep your rage a bit more reflecting stuff. Like little things like that can help sometimes.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's spell reflection in battle stance or defensive stance. It's not just with the defensive thing.
So if I know I might have to reflect soon, I might even go battle stance early. So then I can reflect, and then I might have like an extra 10 rage to come back into berserker to intercept, for example.
Gotcha. What about any PvE applications of spell reflection, or is it not too good?
I mean, there's some bosses where you can reflect. There's some bosses that are designed around spell reflect. The main focus of PvE tanking wise was designed with warrior tanks in mind. So there are mechanics that spell reflect is designed around, right? And then there's a lot of like trash mobs and stuff where you can reflect and just easily get like a ton of threat, or you reflect some sort of like armor penetration debuff back to the mob and you kill it way faster. There's a lot of like stuff like that was designed around spell reflect. So there's some applications, I would say it's kind of niche still, but yeah, it's still useful in some situations.
Gotcha. Okay, chat, if you can think of anything too, just try to. We can listen back to this. But if you think of any.
I mean, I think another thing that's worth saying is like dual wield tanking is no longer thing. It's gonna mostly be like shield tanking. It's not gonna be. You're gonna be going deep prod. You want to get down and get devastated. Like it's such a good talent. You get a lot of good stuff along the way now.
But some
but
people
yeah, like
might say. Sorry. I'm actually really curious your thoughts on this too. Some people might say Classic's going to be so much easier than the private servers. Maybe you could, do the Fury Defiance build, dual wield tanking. Do you still think, just trying to visualize it because you've done so many times, you still think it's not going to shift that back in that direction?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think there's going to be some stuff where you could definitely dual tank. I mean, there's plenty of things I could think of, especially on like the tier 4 Karazhan stuff, especially, where you could probably just Fury tank it. It's not going to be like crazy. Have a shield ready if you drop low, stuff like that. But I think in general the meta's going to be a prod warrior with the shield. Like the damage on these private servers are buffed, yeah. So like maybe I'm, super off, but I don't think I am. Like some of these bosses, like especially in Sunwall, and Crix can attest to this as well. Like your tanks just get destroyed on. And yeah, they're buffed a bit on these private servers, but they're not like super buffed. Maybe they're like 10-15% higher than retail. But it's still at a point where it's your tank needs to be tanking things with the shield. You need to be defensive about it as well.
Gotcha.
I also don't know how good shield slam is strat-wise in Classic, but in PvC it's like really good. I think it's probably just a bit better in PvC. It's like your main threat is shield slam, which obviously requires the shield.
There you go. There it is. That's a big piece of it for sure. So yeah, some people. I think. How do you feel about that, Shed? Are you happy that dual wield tanking is done? You upset by it? Get some feedback there. Another thing that I just noticed too is sweeping strikes has shifted over from arms to fury. That probably has quite a few implications. I noticed some warriors take sweeping strikes in PvP, Ozzy, but it looks like you wouldn't be able to get endless rage if you did that.
No.
What's your take on sweeping strikes and being shifted?
No, you'd have to typically you'd play with a shaman if you take sweeping strikes, and then a little bit further down in the talent tree there's flurry, and I think you go 2 into flurry as well, and on the right there's another one as well. I think it's called weapon something. Weapon mastery. Weapon mastery. And disarm effect to have, so you haven't got to worry about weapon chains ever when you play Warrior, because you're pretty much going to have that always. And one thing as well, when you use sweeping strikes in TBC, I'm pretty sure sure you can use it in Berserker stance, it's fine. But in Classic, you've got to use it in battle stance, I'm pretty sure. I found that out earlier today.
Yep, you do have to use it in battle stance, 100%. Yep.
Yeah, so that is like a slight thing which is different.
Very nice. But so then you wouldn't get endless rage, so you would probably have more. You'd have to manage your rage a bit better, probably.
Well, you get the Wind Fury as well, so that's going to proc an extra hit, so you're going to get quite a lot of rage from that. And if someone's hitting you on top of that, then you're going to have a fair bit of rage.
Gotcha. And then I guess the other thing that I'm noticing, just that we want to point out, some people might be interested in this, is this talent Iron Will. This used to be in protection in Classic. This is the 15% stun resist, so this is pretty huge.
Just 25% as well.
It's pretty good, yeah.
I forgot, was it 25?
I think it was 25 in Classic. Maybe I'm just mixing it up with the Orc ratio. The Orc ratio is Classic.
I think it was 15. This is pretty nice, right? Yeah, I mean, like, you know, they did nerf the Orc racial a bit. There's a few things to consider here, but you know, if you're an Orc and you're just standard PvP spec with your 15% plus another 15% plus maybe the meta gem and stuff like that, you're looking at like, you know, 40+% stun resistance and stuff. I think this is probably a buff for PvP warriors.
Oh, very good. Yeah, it's really, really good. You notice it as well when you play an Orc warrior, how much you actually resist. Like, you actually really notice it.
That kind of goes back on what, as you said earlier as well, about intervene, right? You can lose a game or you can win a game as well, like straight off intervening a kidney shot or intervening a blind or something like that, right? So that could kind of be the same thing where, like, if you have really high pressure and then you resist a stun and the rogue just dies because you didn't get a stun off, you know, you can just like win a game right away or something.
Yeah, he's right.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we covered just some of the main broad strokes changes. So we can talk about racials and faction balance. Again, this is we won't have to spend too much time on this. You know, like we're so lucky to have such. Abide, do you have any TLDR thoughts on racials as a warrior, maybe on the tanking side or the DPS side, APE?
I mean, in TBC, it's like all about Horde. It's kind of a swap from Classic, where, you know, you don't have Paladins on the Horde side. You have everything in TBC. You have Shamans and Paladins, so the Horde ratios are just super strong. So Horde is like the best race, or the best faction rather. Tauren's like kind of the meta. It's just 5% health, and it scales with your gear. So it's an in-game gear, 5% health from Tauren. It's like 2,000 more health. It's a huge amount. For DPS, it's like Orc, basically. Orc's just so broken for like 3 expansions until they finally decide to nerf it. It's just the best DPS spec, or race rather. But, you know, for Classic, you might not need the Tauren health, so maybe you can go something like Troll for a little more threat, or Orc if you're PvPing on the side or something like that.
Now, what about on the Alliance side? That's probably the more interesting. The Horde ones are almost a little more cookie cutter. I mean, I think it's really interesting that you said Tauren.
Yeah.
So people are actually choosing races and specs, not for just maximizing damage and prioritizing survival.
Yeah.
Stuff.
I mean, the 5% health is huge on Tauren. Like, it's really underrated, even for like PvP. War Stomp is actually like an amazing spell as well. It's really kind of overpowered, to be honest. But if I was an Alliance Warrior, I'd go Human 99 times out of 100. Maybe Dwarf, just a meme, because it's kind of, you know, looks good the best, I think. But Alliance Warrior is just, it's free expertise. Like, it's just free stats, basically. There's nothing else you can really get as Alliance. I mean, it's all kind of memey. Obviously, like, Gnome is the best for PvP, but... Yeah, you could do anything. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because I mean, on the PvP side, just to piggyback off what you're saying, Ozzy, you were predicting that Tauren for the Horde might be the best race for Warrior, even more so than the Insane Stun Resist, possibly. Anyway, so like that immediately in my mind, I'm thinking, man, if you go Tauren Warrior for PvP, you're set for PvP and PvE. Maybe for 2 seconds you could just tell you why you think the leeway is so important.
Yeah, I actually think Tauren could be really, really good, because if the leeway actually stays in TPC, I think there could be moments where you're chasing the target around the pillar and you could even proc Mace Stun, or even if you've got Storm Herald, you could actually proc that stun as well. And I think that could actually win you games, to be honest. Like if it actually works like it does in Classic, I think it'd be really, really good. I think Orc will still be like one of the best as well, but I think Tauren could actually have its day in TBC Classic.
Interesting. Do you think? Again, this is like just shooting from the hip here, Ozzy. I mean, there's so much complexity to PvP, but would it be better than Gnome? I was talking to Caitlin the Priest, we were running some TVs the other day, and he said climbing on in Arena is less about how strong you are versus certain matchups. It's more about like reducing your shitty matchups. And like, do you think you're overall looking better against stuff as a Tauren, or do you still think Gnome is master rate? Essentially, if leeway works the same way.
I think Gnome, it's a hard one, man. It's hard to say until I've actually tested it, but I think Gnome is always going to be really, really good, without a doubt. But the only thing which makes me doubt Gnome slightly is the fact that it's going to be a 33% chance to resist on the racial. And I've actually played on TBC servers where you've literally hit 2 racials and they resist twice in a row, so the racials actually haven't done anything. And that's the only thing which gives me doubt in my mind about Gnome. I'm still going to make one anyway and play one, but that's the only thing which makes me think, okay, Tauren could actually, maybe in some situations, actually be better than the Gnome. It feels weird to say it. It feels really weird to say it, but it could be.
So the Gnome racial just inherently has its own little resist and hit table where it's always a 33% chance to not work?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure in Classic it's actually got a cast time, whereas in TBC it's instant and it's just got a third of a chance to resist.
Yeah, that's one thing that's I'm glad you guys brought it up, but I was gonna say this as well. Like, a lot of people are playing on that Endless Arena server, right? But Endless has a lot of quality of life changes, so they've removed that non-resistance chance on the racial for the PvP sake of things, right?
Yeah.
And then the hitboxes as well. Like you're talking about the leeway on Taurens, the hitboxes on Endless are all the same. So like a Tauren might look bigger than a Gnome, but their hitbox is exactly the same.
Exactly.
So, like, that's one thing I wanted to bring up and just ask you about, Azir, because Taurens are actually really good. Because, like, on Blaze Edge Arena, you can hit through almost the entire pillar. You can hit through, like, 3/4 of it. So you can always, like, basically, it's really hard to escape a Tauren warrior and pillar him, which is, like, the meta in the arena, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, if you can proc a stun off it as well, that could be huge. That could be so big.
Can't escape it, basically.
The only thing which, there is negatives to everything, and the only thing which makes me think it could be bad is if there's a rogue, like you're just about to get the poisons off, and a rogue from Africa just gets the poison on you, and then you keep 5 points. Yeah, that could be really rough.
Yeah, I mean, it's upside and down. It's double-edged sword, right? Like, you get hit by AoEs a lot easier. You can be hit from further away, but you can also hit. I don't know. I think it's, like, pretty comparable, like you said, to Orc. I mean, it's at the end, it's going to come down to, like, what the population is playing, and if you're countering that or not,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good to know from your perspective, Abide, because most people probably are not going to have multiple of the same class, and like if you want a PvP and PvE, you can still like main tank or do whatever as a Gnome. It's not like GG, like you have to be human if you're going to play Alliance. So anyway, we can go past that now. All right, let's talk about the specs. Let's talk about the state of the specs. So there's a lot of variations, different builds and stuff like that. Maybe we'll start with Fury. This is a hard-hitting one. People say Fury in TBC Classic is going to be dog shit. It's going to be potentially the worst spec in the entire game. They have the least utility out of any spec in the entire game. If you're going to go a DPS warrior, you're going to go arms. I don't know if this is triggering you or if you agree with this. I'm not sure. But let's kick it off with the Abide. Your take on Fury PvE. Is there anything good about it?
I mean, in general, so on private servers, like, it's kind of two different things, right? On private servers, like, all this stuff gets buffed. So melee, in general, just typically weaker because of private servers. So that won't really be as much of a factor on classic. But in general, like, melee are always just worse than range. Until, like, I think until, like, later, like, Mop or Kata, right? But, like, why have a melee who can't DPS on certain mechanics versus a range that can DPS all the time, right? Like 100% uptime. There's always, like, stuff on the ground you can't go near, or you have to you know, this boss, you know, kills anyone that gets in melee range, or this boss has consecrate on the ground, or whatever type of stuff like that, right? Like a melee can't DPS, but a range can just sit there and DPS. I don't think I think Warrior kind of gets a bad rap. It's kind of, you know, it's not as bad as people meme about. It's kind of like the private server thing. Like it's bad because everything's buffed. Like if content's super buffed, right, then you're in those phases for longer where melee can't DPS. So then melee become worse because they have less uptime, right? Because the fight lasts longer. So that won't be as much of a concern on Classic, but in general, like it's just range is better than melee because they have full uptime. But I mean, Fury's really strong once you get geared up. Melee in general are just weak at the start because they're weapon reliant, right? Versus, you know, you're just spell power reliant as a caster. Your weapon doesn't matter, but you need like constantly to upkeep your weapons as melee. And early on, you don't really have that much option. So you're weak early on, and once you get to like around like tier 6, you start picking up. And Warrior will be pretty good around then. It kind of depends on what the meta is. Like if the meta is around like speed clearing, you might see a lot of Warrior comps if it's classic rolled to TBC, because a lot of people won't reroll, right? So you'll have a lot of like, lead comps and Warriors leading stuff down, which will be pretty strong. It's not going to be bad, but it's just not like, you know, Warlock can just press one AoE and AoE everything versus a Warrior whirlwinding 4 mobs and pulling threat and dying because they're in melee range.
Yeah.
So it's not as bad as it is on private servers. It'll see play. I think a lot of people won't reroll from Classic, so you'll probably have on average like 2 Warriors per guild or something. Fury, I mean, rather. But yeah, I mean, if you want a guaranteed raid spot, I would say learn arms, and if your guild doesn't have an arms warrior, you can be arms and you'll be in like every single boss every time.
So the reason why you would choose arms, I think, is this right here. You can see it kind of on the talent. See that little fist chat, that 0 out of 2? It gives 4% increase to physical damage, so that's going to really help your hunters and stuff like that. I'm curious though, and it's going to probably change throughout the different phases and tiers of content and stuff. Like paper doll dummy just standing behind a dummy. Would a Fury warrior pump harder than an arms warrior, just for whatever that's worth to you? Sorry, you cut out there for a second. You might have DC'd or something, possibly, too. Well, maybe...
am I okay?
There is. Yeah, now you're good now, yep.
Yeah, I mean, a Fury's a DPS spec, like, it's gonna be arms. Arms is like a support spec, right? So it should lose to Fury.
Okay.
But, I mean, arms brings utility, that's what it is, right? It's not there for DPSing. It's not like they do bad damage, you have to play properly, there's a lot of things that them min-max, and, like, you have to watch your swing timer or stuff like that. Versus Fury, you just kind of push the buttons when they come off cooldown. But the arms is there for utility and for buffing the raid. Like if you look at all the physical damage and you take 4% of the damage they dealt and gave it to the arms, because that's what he brings, right? 4% physical. Then the arms is going to be the Fury for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it's just cool to know that Fury at least has some redeeming aspect in that sense that, like, maybe if you're just soloing, there's more damage than arms. And
yeah, like if you want to be Fury for sure for like DPS, pure DPS, but like arms is gonna be. I think arms is like almost every single raid is gonna have 1 arms guaranteed, and it's gonna be like a core spot. You need to be there for like every raid. You're gonna be in for every boss type of thing. Versus Fury, it's like, okay, well this boss is good for melee, or this boss, you know, we want to progress with a hunter instead of you or something like that, right? So we'll bring that guy instead, and we'll bring you for the farm. I don't know, like Fury's not going to be that bad, but like arms isn't there for DPS. It's just there for like, it brings so much utility, right? Like it has Sunder Armors. It can go Sunder Armor, something that like maybe the Druid's tanking on the side, or it can Thunderclap and Demo Shout, and it can, you know, apply all the debuffs and disarms and stuff like that. Like the Fury can as well, but it's like it's there to DPS, and if it's doing that, it's like, you know, it's not bringing utility while doing bad damage. Like,
gotcha. The other kind of final question on this too, a lot of people might be wondering this in the chat, how come you don't dual wield anymore? Like I'm looking up Fury builds and I'm seeing 2-handed Fury builds, and then arms you're using a 2-hander. Is it just straight up the weapon progression isn't there for 1 hand? Is it like, or maybe do you have anything on that?
I'm not sure where you saw 2-handed Fury. I mean, that's like a leveling thing you can do in PvC.
Oh, so
other than that, you're dual wielding for Fury for sure.
My bad. Hey, there we go. Yeah, okay, so
for arms, you 2-hander most of the time. Just you know, you get a bunch of 2-handed talents, and your abilities are slow hitting and are based on weapon damage. You want the highest weapon damage you can get, which is from a two-hander, right? You can always dual wield, then do some Mimi specs. There's some odd specs you can do that kind of go like mix between the two trees, but yeah, like typically arms is two-hander, Fury's dual wield.
Gotcha.
One thing I'd like to add though, when I done PvE on, I used to have Mortal Strike instead of Bloodthirst with a two-hander. I used to have Storm Herald, and I think Mortal Strike was so good because it scales with weapon damage. So I done much more damage with Mortal Strike instead of Bloodthirst with a two-hander.
Yeah, Bloodthirst is just attack power scaling only, so it doesn't scale with weapons. It just scales with gear. It scales with your gear, but not as hard, right? Because the Storm Strike or the Mortal Strike scales off weapon damage directly versus just attack power on the Bloodthirst.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, so we went over Fury a bit and kind of where it is. I guess final thing, like, are you taking, like, it seemed like you would take a Fury under certain situations. Is it just because, like, there's no, you don't have enough players and you would just take a Fury Warrior, or maybe in the later stages of the game?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. You can always recruit one, obviously. I mean, I think the thing, like, on TBC private servers, and it's going to be even worse on Classic, because on TBC Classic, because it's rolling from vanilla to TBC, right? But there's always an overabundance of Fury Warriors and Rogues looking for guilds, like, because you typically only want 1 or 0 of those classes. Mm-hmm. So there's always excess of those classes. So, like, if you ever, like, need a raid spot, you can, or need a, you need someone in the guild, like you're 24 people or something, you can always, I'm sure it'll be super easy to be able to recruit one. But, I mean, that being said, personally, if I make a guild on TBC Classic, I'm not taking a Fury Warrior. Like, it's just, it's a pure DPS class that brings no utility, that doesn't even do, like, that great a DPS until the late game, and it's not even, like, that, like, it's like melee versus range for me. It's just, like, why take a class that doesn't have 100% uptime versus a class that has 100% uptime?
Mm-hmm.
What you usually see people doing on the servers, which what I'll probably do, is the Fury Warriors that want to be Fury are something else. Like they're Shadow Priest, or they're a Warlock, or you're a Hunter, or whatever, and then when you just have that alt, let's get passively geared up dog raids, right? And then when T6 comes, you hard swap to your Fury, you recruit another Warlock or a Hunter, since those are
that's definitely the way to go about it, in my opinion. I mean, I think some people will still play it, obviously, through, but I think that's, like, the best way to do it, because you're kind of, like, dead weight until late tier 5, early tier 6. There's really not a lot of cleave fights as well, right? And that's where Warriors specialize. There's only a few fights where you can just full cleave out on ads, right? So it's kind of just bad overall.
Ozzy, have you ever seen anybody attempt to play Fury in PvP, or is it a complete non-starter?
It's just a no-go, I think. I don't think anyone's really played it actually wanting to do anything good. Like, maybe someone came out of a raid and was like, okay, I might just do some PvP because there's CBA to respec. But the Mortal Strike is way too big to not get, basically. You just lose all your pressure. They'll just heal through.
Gotcha. Alright, let's talk about protection then. So the Protection Warrior. Really curious, because would you consider yourself mainly a tank? Or...
yeah, I mean, I've played tank mostly for most of the time on the servers, all the different tanks, but mostly Prot Warrior.
Where do you see Warriors in the tanking meta?
I mean, like I said, I don't think the damage is going to be like that much different from private servers. The earlier you go in the content, the less it'll be buffed. Like, you might see like Magtheridon in tier 4 does like double damage on private servers, versus like a tier 6 boss might only be like 30% more damage, because the base damage is so high that they can't double it, right? Or you just get one shot. So like early on, probably won't be like Warrior's really good at being like. It's good at like being survivable and having the like it's the most survivable tank out of all the tanks for sure. Not just because it has cooldowns, but just like the way it gears, the scaling of its gear, all that stuff. It's the most survivable out of all the tanks. And then you add on the cooldowns like that. No other the other tanks just don't have any cooldowns, right? It just makes Warrior like it's just the best tank for surviving. So like maybe early progression you don't want one. If depending on how long the content's out, maybe farming the content, you might not want the Warrior to tank, but I mean, personally for me, I think the Prot Warrior is going to be the best tank for all the content. Like
for all the content, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people say like, you'll swap to a Druid for farming, or Pt.11 can do. will be the best tank. I mean, at the end of the day, like you'll be able to maintain everything with any tank. Like you can be a druid tank and maintain everything, or a paladin and tank everything. It might not be as easy. You might have some bumps in the road, but you can do it for sure.
You hear this thrown around a lot, but I don't know if it's necessarily true or not. I'm just gonna say that it's Sunwell and beyond, or maybe even Tier 6 and beyond. I think it's Sunwell, because there's something about the nature of Sunwell where druids become like these untouchable tanking monsters. Like they have so much dodge, and they really like turn on and they scale the best out of all the tanks. Do you think that's true, or do you is there more to it?
I mean, druids only have dodge, right? So it's kind of weird to say that they have a lot of dodge. It's like, yeah, of course, that's all they have, right? Mm-hmm. So Sunwell has a few things that I think this is probably what you're mentioning, is people talking about. On a lot of Sunwell bosses, they disable crushing blows. So, like, the second boss can't crush, the third boss can't crush. I think that's about it. Like, the first boss, there's 2 halves to it. The first half can't crush. So druids, that's like druid tanks' biggest weakness is they get crushed, which is 150% damage of a normal hit, because you just can't get crush cap with only dodge. So druids kind of are slightly better in that raid because they can't be crushed, but there's plenty of other bosses that have crush disabled as well, and people don't seem to mention that. But Sunwell also has a buff that makes it so you dodge 20% less, because they basically just like didn't balance the game well. There's no diminishing returns in TVC, so you can have agility. You could stack avoidance up and get 100% avoidance and never get hit, right? Like there's multiple videos of rogues taking Illidan or whatever boss, and druids are unhittable, stuff like that.
Holy shit, I didn't know that. That's crazy. You could
yeah
get 100% avoidance.
Yeah, you need to get to like 102.4% total like dodge, parry, miss, and you can literally like never be hit. There's videos of like rogue tanking 5-man Rules Lair and rogue tanking Illidan and Mother and all that stuff. You can't do it in Sunwell because they made an aura for that, right? Like that's why it's like the game was just not finished being balanced, so they had to make a thing to kind of balance it out a little bit in the in-game content to make it easy. So if you went into these raids, like the aura makes it so you get hit 5% more of the time, and you dodge 20% less, right? So it's just like something they try to do to balance tanks out. Gotcha. They have to do it dodge. It has to be dodge because druids obviously can't parry, right, or block. So they had to put it all on dodge. So I would say, I mean, druids are a strong tank overall. Like if I was to have a tanking comp or make a tanking team for TVC, I would have a mix of one of each tank. They're all strong in their own functionality. They're all good at their own certain bosses. Like I would have the druid tank some bosses, a paladin would take some bosses, but I mean, still overall, like the warrior's the tankiest for sure. I mean, no matter what people say, like warriors always take less damage than druids. Like just you have so much more mitigation, even if you're not counting for.
Gotcha.
Keep going through a tunnel.
It's all good. No, that makes a lot. You explain it in such a simple like way. It's really nice, man. So this is a quick aside too. It kind of has nothing to do with what you were talking about, but it sort of relates because you've been in a raid leading position. You've clearly cleared the content 9 bajillion times. Are there world buffs in TBC? People say that they kind of do exist. People might get sweaty with them. The world buff meta may be like still there. Like there are a couple. I don't even know exactly what they all are, these world buffs that they're talking about. What's your take on that real quick?
There are some world buffs. There's a few like really niche ones. There's one, so there's like a quest chain in one of the zones, and at the end of the super long quest chain, you get a AoE buff in the zone for completing it. But like that's like a one-time thing kind of thing, unless you want to level alts every time, right? It's super unreliable. It's not something you're gonna do. Like you have to level a new character every single time and do the whole quest chain to get this buff. But it is a thing there.
What is
I think
that,
sunflowers. I forget what it's called, the buff itself, because I've never done it because it's just too try hard. But it's a quest called it's something from the Great Earth Mother. It's like a whole quest chain. Like at the end of the day, like it's something you might see like the super sweaters do when they're like trying to put a parse up, but it's not something you're gonna do at all. Like it's nothing. You're not gonna like get. It's not like a Nixie head where you have to go get this. It's like it's not gonna be a real reality.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's stuff from like the
I think,
Zanger March guys and stuff. No one really gets that. You know, those trees that give you.
Well, those only work in the zone, but they're really minor. You could get them again. I think it might be one of those things. It kind of depends on what the meta is, right? Like, if the meta is like boss speed kills, people will probably try hard and get those as well. But also, like, if it's the whole raid speed clear, right? Like it is in Classic, you'll see people get them before the raid for sure. But you're not going to go out and teleport out and get it every time. You might get it on progression, but it's not something that's... It's something that's like you might go there before the raid and pick it up, but it's not required. But you know, a lot of people like to min max, so that's probably something people pick up.
Gotcha.
I mean, personally, I've never done it because on private servers everything's buffed, so you wipe a lot. So it's kind of like not useful when you go in there and wipe 4 times in a row, right?
So kind of even if these things do exist in TBC, they don't move the needle as much too. So it's like you.
Yeah. That's one major thing as well as in Classic. Everything's really overpowered in Classic. Like the things are super unbalanced. So the world buffs are a huge factor. Like even like the tank flask, for example. You play Classic, so how much HP is the tank flask in Classic? 1500?
Something like that. Titans, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I think it gives almost as much health as the Wrath of the Lich King. I think it's 1200 or something in Classic. I can't remember, but it's insane. It got nerfed to 400 in TBC. Wow. So like it's just everything's like super unbalanced. You can get like 6,000 health just from world buffs and stuff like you could double your health. Like there's so much crazy stuff like that. But it should be in Classic TBC as well. But like if you're level 763, I believe, and you don't get world buffs anymore. You can't get world buffs at level 60 past level 63.
Gotcha.
But I think Songflowers still work. I'm pretty sure. And there's another one as well from like if somebody kills Kel'Thuzad, he drops a necklace, like a quest item, and if you turn that in chat Wrath, it gives a buff out, and it's kind of like a Nixia's head. It's basically the same functionality as the Nixia's head. So you might see people try and get that, but I don't think that's really like it's not going to be as big of a deal because again, like people are going to be wiping this stuff as well. It's not like Classic where you're going to go and just one shot everything. You probably will early on, but you know you're not going to do that later. It's not going to be useful.
Yeah. And to kill Kel'Thuzad, even in TBC, like it's not something you can just go solo. Like you have to actually get a raid in there and actually. I assume you can't just. I know Warlocks need like Black Book, and they like beg their guild to go back into BWL. Like a Warlock can't just.
Sorry, I meant Kel'Thas and Tempest.
Oh, Kel'Thas. Gotcha. My bad. Kel'Thas.
Yeah. I mean.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about arms now. We talked about pride.
Oh, real quick. Oh, are you gonna go over gearing for each one of these? Because I have a question from chat about tank warrior trinkets. How do you do your pre-raid trinkets for T4 and what trinket swaps and stuff like that?
I mean, for trinkets, you want to go engineering and just get the stamina trinkets. There's other trinkets as well that you probably will want. There's like hit trinkets from questing that's pretty useful. But yeah, majority of your trinket time is going to be using the engineering trinkets. They're just, I think they're 45 stamina each. You can have 2 of them. It's a very high amount of health very early on. You put 2 of those on, you get Blessings of Kings. It's like 1,500 health.
And you pull with it, yeah? Use it a pull?
Yeah. If you go Goblin, you can pull with it. I mean, you should probably go Gnomish just so you can get a Battle Chicken for buffing people's haste. But I mean, you can go Goblin as well. Goblin's pretty good as well. You can use the rocket launchers. The Gnomish one has no use; it's useless. Like, but yeah, you can if you go Goblin, it has a pull thing. You can pull with it.
Gotcha. Okay, let's talk
you
about.
You said gemming, sorry, or no? Would you say just the trinkets or tricks?
Well, gymming? No, just that. There was just a chat someone else asked about. I'm just asking questions. Gymming, yeah, you can go for gymming too if you want. I always assume like you can go the survivability route or you go the threat route, right?
I mean, there's no real threat route. You just kind of go stam. You can go like agile is like your second best stat. I don't really think strength's that great, but you can go strength maybe. I don't think it's good. I think agility's better than strength for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. We did that tanking episode before too, right, Crix? And we like got the druid perspective, we got the paladin perspective. Everybody is just gemming stam. It's something to keep in mind, folks, in the chat. Like, you really are kind of a tank in TBC. You get survivability stuff. You're not just going full Zug anymore, which is refreshing.
Yeah, and one thing to think about as well is there's some more tanky the less healers you need, right? It's like if you can kind of all beef up a little bit the raid, if you can cut a healer, you squeeze a little more damage out of it because of that.
True. You're not wrong. Ozzy, tell us about arms, man. Like, I mean, this is a PvE. We talked sort of about it already on the PvE side. It is the PvE spec for warriors, you know, and they have that 4% utility. But more interestingly, on the PvP side, like, do you see warriors as an S tier or tier 1 PvP class? Maybe they're stronger in certain seasons. What's your take?
I think warriors progressively get better like each season. So like season 1 is really hard for a warrior. They're just really soft, don't really do much damage, and they do struggle quite a lot. But I think season 2 they start getting a bit better though, because they get the Storm Herald, and that kind of gives them a big boost. And then when you get to season 3 and 4, that's probably when you're going to see the warriors strongest, because the Battle Master, the ARP and whatnot, they just have much better survivability. And no, I wouldn't actually call warrior S tier. Nah, it's not quite on the level as other classes. You can have fun with it, but it's not quite as good as the others.
Interesting. What do you see as the main drawbacks of it if you're playing at that top level?
I think the mobility is quite rough. When you're in combat, all you really have is intercept and intervene. And if your druid's not in a place for you to intervene to get onto your target, then essentially you only really have intercept. So the mobility is probably the worst thing, and the fact they can be CC'd quite a lot.
Just out of curiosity, what would you put, like, if you had to choose classes or one or something? What would you choose in your mind?
Well, I think rogue is the best. I'd say mage, priest, druid, warlock, those kind of classes.
Damn, all those above warrior? Holy shit, man.
Yeah, definitely. I think hunter and warrior are kind of on like a similar level, I'd say. But yeah, they're not as good as those other classes.
Damn. So if you had to, I know, given everything you said about warriors being soft in season 1 and not having access to the stun herald and all that, what would you roll season 1 if you had to? It seems like you're gonna have to do this, right? Like, at some point.
Yeah, I've got to play warrior anyway. But yeah, I'm just gonna play warrior druid and just try rough it out and just hope I don't get one-shotted too hard, man. I just got to stick with it for now.
Gotcha. They do seem like they put a ridiculous amount of damage out, almost more than rogue on the endless at least. Like, it's pretty inspiring, especially if you see sword spec warrior with the shaman. It's so nasty the amount of damage they can put out. But yeah, like that requires them to actually be able to attack their target.
Yeah, exactly. Like, even though warriors aren't S tier, they do have their moments where when they pop Death Wish and stuff like that, they really can do some damage and they can be a handful. Like, in their moments, they are very, very strong, without doubt.
Gotcha.
They're annoying.
Okay.
From a warlock point of view, yeah.
Warrior's pretty good, it's just like the other classes are just so much better comparatively, right? Like, rogue is actually just like super unbalanced.
So we talked about kind of the overviews. We can talk about there's so much to talk about. We can talk about maybe, let's assume it's fresh classic at like today, tomorrow, whatever. You know, like you're just, you know, you're hitting the ground running, fresh server abide. What's going through your mind, man? Like, what's your strategy? Are you gonna dungeon cleave up? Are you gonna go solo? What like kind of slots in the best with the warrior? You know, what items are you looking for? Big ticket items to pick up ASAP? Is there anything from classic you're trying to bring into it?
I mean, first thing I'm doing is crying in guild chat, and I'm getting 5 people to carry me the whole time because warrior's still the worst leveling class. Like.
Yeah. So you're probably gonna be in a dungeon then the whole way?
I mean, I would probably try and do world stuff still. A lot of the questing is like a lot better in TBC. It's nerfed experience to level. The quests give a little bit more experience past level 20, I believe it is, and it's 33% less experience to level as well. The big thing as well is that a lot of the elites are non-elites, so you can solo a lot more quests. You can do a lot more quests that don't require groups. So it's not like the end of the world if you group solo, or if you quest solo rather. But I mean, you always ideally want to quest with somebody else because you are just like the slowest killing. You know, you have the most downtime. It's still kind of like the same leveling thing as classic. You want to like hamstring type stuff, and, you know, avoid melee swings in between if you can, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I would probably quest and when I got to TBC, I would probably dungeon cleave until, you know, get all the reps up as you're doing dungeons and get to 70 and then go back.
Here's a question: if you wanted to be an arms PvE warrior, right? Like that's your role. You want to get the Storm Herald eventually and all that. Would you go prot to start to organize your own dungeons and stuff, or do you think you're okay? Be arms.
I mean, it depends. Like the meta on these private servers at the start of the server is typically AOE farming rep. So it's going to be kind of hard to get in as a DPS. You kind of, well, you'll have to, as a DPS warrior, you'll have to look for cleave groups, right? Melee cleave groups. Because there's always going to be melee that can't join these, you know, double warlock mage groups, stuff like that. Your best bet is to always have an off-spec for sure. The tank is probably the most desired role if it's not healer for dungeons. So if you have an off-spec or even just tank gear you can put on as your current spec, like, you'll be able to get into way more dungeons. So I would be on the lookout for prot stuff like that. And, you know, probably, depending on your guild and needs for that, right? Like, I'd probably be looking more towards prot, most likely.
And another question too is people are going to be living in dungeons, and that's going to be a whole chapter of the game as you normal dungeons and heroics and stuff. Do you think warrior tanking is they struggle the most in the dungeons? Do you think it's not as bad as people think? A lot of people think warrior tanking is horrible.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much have to hate yourself to want to repeatedly do dungeons as warrior. It's like terrible. It's the worst shit ever.
Oh, shit. Why is that? Maybe you can explain why. Why is it?
I mean, it's terrible. Like, I mean, you have one ability that just hits 4 targets. That's your AOE. So, you know, when the guy behind you face pulls 4 mobs and then the healer's pre-healing you and the 4 mobs that are coming in front, you know, you pretty much just want to cast Hearthstone and leave. But, I mean, it's a lot of, you have to utilize a lot of your kit, basically, as warrior in dungeons. Like, it's a lot of stance swapping, and you should be utilizing Whirlwind as prot. Like, you should be thunderclapping and then stancing and doing Whirlwind. That's just extra AoE that you can have, right? It's just something that puts more threat out. It's not like it's bad. It's not like you can't do the dungeons. It's just, it's a lot more micromanagement and attention required versus, you know, Paladin. You go press Consecrate and you can go AFK for 10 seconds.
I can go from a warlock perspective. Warriors are the worst tank to have in dungeons, whether it's rep farming, normals, or heroics. And from a healer perspective, I don't like healing them compared to the other ones either.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just prefer to heal. They feel, I don't know, maybe it could be the word. They feel squishier. And from a warlock, they just don't hold threat as much, right? You got to wait more. Druid looks like they have a little bit of on a 3-target swipe or whatever the hell it's called, where I can put some damage out there. The warrior, I can't double dot nothing. I can't do damage. I'm not seeding. I'm not doing anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what the meta is and what you're trying to get into. Like, if you're doing like the spell cleave stuff, like I was saying, like Mage double lock or something, the tank doesn't really matter. You're there just to group to lock the mobs up, and then the AoE happens and you're useless after that. Because they're all perma-slowed by the mage and they're running to the warlocks, but they're so slow they'll never reach them, right? But you know, you can do everything, no problem. It's just like you're not gonna have as much of an easy time with the warrior tank, like Crick's, exactly like Crick said. Like, you can't AoE stuff down, so everything just kind of takes a little bit longer. It's not like terrible. The upside is that you can kind of chain pull a little bit more, but I mean, Druid's is better at that as well. But I mean, it's still good. You could just have to put a lot more attention and stuff into it, and people kind of need to understand that a warrior isn't a paladin, and they can't just like start seeding instantly, or, you know, if something gets face pulled, you can wait for the tank to pick stuff up. It's not like, oh, I just start putting dots on mob number 12 that are tapped onto, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is the big problem with warrior. I can imagine being a warrior tank and being miserable with all these new warlocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Warlocks are dying in classic still to hellfire, bro. So let alone imagine Seed of Corruption for people who've never used Seed of Corruption, and it's a warrior tank. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you are still a tank. You're still gonna find groups easily. You're still gonna
Yeah.
still gonna be looking for tanks.
I mean,
you're just the last tank
like,
pin.
They'll still be fine, right? Like, I mean, the problem becomes like exactly like you said. Like when you start fucking, and you start getting people that are doing like their first time, or they don't understand their first time with the warrior tank. You know, what is the sort of farm that evolves and it goes into bubble groups, especially for heroics? People might not understand how to play a dungeon at all because all it's doing is like spam seeded, the mage slowing everything. Most likely not doing that for sure, but the meta will change a bit, right? So like people will not understand how to play things properly, right?
Yeah, it's true.
like, you know, these new abilities, you have Devastate, Shield Slam is your highest. So you get value from Whirlwind. Maybe you can walk us through the mind of a 200 IQ tank if you're doing dungeons or raids. You know, like imagine you're doing like the Nightmare, like Shattered Halls, Gauntlet. You know, like are you just tab devastating stuff, or maybe just using Shield Slam on cooldown? Just generally speaking, I know there's a lot of balance to it, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of target swapping. You have to be aware of your threat on a lot of different mobs. Typically, your rotation will be something you Shield Slam Skull, because it's your highest threat, and then you'll, maybe you do like one cleave. You don't really want to cleave too much. It doesn't have that much threat. Like, if you do Heroic Strike, the second mob, it's about, I think it's slightly more rage. It's way more Heroic Strike threat is super high, versus Mage just being, it's a little bit of threat, and then it's just weapon damage, right? It's like a little bit of weapon damage, it's weapon damage, a little bit of base damage, and a little bit of base threat. Like, Heroic Strike has like a massive amount of base threat. There's a lot more weapon damage, and then it's a lot more base damage. So like the threat it does is way higher. So like ideally you don't want to cleave like crazy, because you burn through rage really quick as well. So it's a lot more rage per attack. But like you want to like Shield Slam Skull, and then you want to put some Devastates on the next. You know, cycle through, put some Devastates around. And depending on the number of mobs you're tanking, like thunderclapping cooldown, I like to go defense or berserker stance, do like a whirlwind, put berserker rage up so I get more rage. Swap back, thunderclap again, throw out another, you know, devastate or revenge. Revenge is really good as well. Like you just kind of do, you need to like spread your damage out pretty evenly while keeping good threat on skull. Because you like your best friend is a warrior tank is a shaman healer, because Earth Shield just it gives you threat every time it heals, so like that saves you a lot of like headache on AoE pulls. But yeah, it's a lot of like micromanaging your threat on multiple targets. One of your really good friends, or one of your best friends as a warrior, is consumables. Like immolation pots are huge for AoE thinking. For example, sapper charges, like even the molten core engineering shield, like stuff like that is massive. Like it makes your life 10 times easier.
You said zappers. You're still using zappers.
Yeah, there's a new version of it. It's called like Super Sapper Charge. But even if like the I think it does like 1500 damage or something. The PvC version. But I mean stuff like that. Like you pop one of those, and you never have to worry about the healer pulling threat. You know, if the warlock wants to seed and pull threat instantly, you can never prevent that basically. But you can always your main goal, your main priority first of all is like not letting the healer die. If the healer dies, it's 9 times out of 10 your fault, right? So if a DPS dies, it's like having a good amount of threat on everything so that you don't lose it to the healers, and then kind of building on skull and X. And typically after like X dies, you should be able to AoE if you keep kind of putting thunderclaps and whirlwind up.
Gotcha. And let's just assume fighting a boss or fighting a patchwork style fight, taking it away from the raid, where you don't have to worry about because it gets a little messy where you're thinking about doing this to X, this to skull, this to condom, or whatever. Single target, are you just shield slam on cooldown, devastate up to 5? What does the rotation look like on just the single target for tank?
It's shield slam Sprile, revenge is second pile, and then it's heroic strike and devastate are about even. Depending on what you have in the raid, you probably want to devastate first, like 5 devastates first. I would still shield slam always. But you want to, you want to get the debuff, the Sunder Armor debuff up as soon as possible. But typically you're going to have a rogue doing exposed armor. But on trash bots, for example, I prioritize getting 5 Sunders up, like right away, just so they die faster, right? But like on a boss, you basically go shield slam, revenge, devastate, and then the cycle just repeats.
Is exposed armor better than Sunder?
It's more armor penetration. I think it's 475 more armor penetration. So it's just like, if you have 10 physical DPS, you're giving the raid like, almost 5,000 armor penetration. Like it's definitely better. It reduces your threat a bit, this Sprout Warrior, but it's still worth it. Like it's worth the raid gaming DPS.
What about on a boss? Like, are you like on a boss that's hitting super hard? Do you even bother with Whirlwind or not worth it? It's kind of
no. Like that's basically just like a heroic thing only. Like you need to put some damage out on mobs, and if your only ability is Thunderclap, like. If you do a whirlwind, even if it's reduced, it's because Berserker Stance has innate 20% threat reduction, right? So even if you're getting some reduced damage on, like, or reduced threat on the damage is still better than nothing, because you have nothing else in your kit.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, like the heroic strike is kind of the thing in TBC or in classic, right? Like it's all about heroic strike. It's kind of the same thing. Like if rage is not an issue, you never want a white hit. You want a heroic strike every single time. I think devastate is slightly more threat than heroic strike, if I remember correctly. I haven't done the math on it in a little bit, but basically, yeah, you want a heroic strike. It's a lot of like micromanaging your rage and knowing like when you hit, what type of rage you have coming in. So if you're out of rage and you have shield slams, then you don't want a heroic strike, right? Because then you lose that white hit rage. So it's a lot of like looking at that and paying attention.
What about like shield block? Are you using that on cooldown? It's
yeah, that's you have to or you get crushed.
Okay, so shield block on CD.
Yeah, definitely.
Gotcha.
Then you could always, you know, troll it up and not shield block and get crushed for rage, which probably is actually going to be a big thing in classic, especially early on.
Gotcha. So, you mentioned engineering. Engineering seems really good. The more of these deep dives we do, like, have you noticed that, Crix? Every class that we bring on, like, especially when we talk about fresh and stuff, I feel like they're all going, like, leatherworking.
You are not
for some reason. And then you're talking about super sapper charges. I heard there's a bomb that silences for 5 seconds and stuff, too. It seems like...
I believe that's a classic, isn't it? It's called, I think it's Arcanite Bomb or something.
Yeah, no, that's TBC. They put on a Arcanite in classic, but, you know, I know it's a
Wish to speak?
silence and everything seems insane. I was wondering if you just chain those into each other, there's no diminishing return on silence, right? Couldn't you just like perma silence anything?
With the acrobat.
Yeah, I mean, our engineering is still really good.
You here.
It's got, I think some classes like in Prot Warrior, I would probably almost always go engineering. The bombs are very useful as well. Like you said, like there's some. It doesn't work on bosses. Most bosses are immune to everything, right? But there's a lot of trash balls where you can throw those out. Like another thing that's similar is the Blood Elf Racial. Is an arcane torrent. So you can silence for 2 seconds, and you can use that pretty frequently on a lot of trash backs where you want to interrupt them or just kind of stop them from casting for a second or whatever type of deal, right? So the bombs are kind of like a good replacement for that. There's a lot of like really cool tools in there. Like there's different bombs that freeze mobs, bombs that incapacitate mobs. There's a lot of different things in the engineering kit that make it like extremely useful. I think as a warrior tank, it's like your #1 profession. You pretty much want to have engineering for sure. Like your goggles are really good. All the utility it gets from it. Like I'd be so much worse off without having sapper charges for those, like when the guy's face pulled in the dungeon. Like a sapper charge saves your life.
So are you gonna go leatherworking engineering?
Yeah, that'd be what I would do for sure.
Okay. Gotcha.
Other Rick is just so strong at 3DC, it's kind of hard to...
Another little thing too, I know it's going back to the racials for a second, but Crix and I were doing this tank build. We weren't 100% sure. Like, you know how the orcs have the axe expertise? Apparently, that can affect weapon progression and stuff too. Like, if you're using the Thrallmar solid axe instead of something like that. Is that a thing for you? I know you mentioned Torrent. That seems like a nice little bonus.
Yeah, I've been Orc before as well. Yeah, I mean, there's some weapons, like, in the very end game, if you're Orc versus, like, Torrent or Human or something, your best weapon changes. But the thing is, there's very few axes that are tanking weapons. There's only 3 that I can think of. There's probably more, and I'm just not remembering, because they're really not good. Like, there's only, like, 3 ones that you could probably ever use, and one of them's, like you mentioned, the Reputation one from Thrallmar. You know, that's just the equivalent. Like, the hard one isn't actually, I think, the Alliance with the sword. There's one from, like, ZA, but that's kind of like a catch-up weapon. You should ideally already have a tank weapon by that point. And then there's one from Black Temple. The Black Temple one's the one that, like, that's your best weapon if you're Orc. But other than that, like, the axes are kind of just... You can replace it pretty quickly, and it's not, like, really good anywhere except for in-game. But yeah, it does affect your weapon progression. You'll change different weapons based on that, if you have the ratio or not.
Gotcha. Before I forget to, I know this is another random little tangent thing, but I was really curious to ask this of Ozzy. So, Blood Fury.
it mortal strikes you pretty much, right? And like you talked in the past how that can actually be beneficial and help drop wound poison stacks. So first question on that is like, is that literally how that works? You use Blood Fury, you get the debuff. As soon as that debuff drops, all the wound poison goes away, or is it as soon as you activate Blood Fury, all the wound poison is gone immediately?
So, yeah, so basically, as soon as you hit Blood Fury, any Mortal Strike wound poison which was already on you is basically consumed by the racial effect, and then after 15 seconds, the Blood Fury is gone, and then like any healing reduction effect is removed. So, for example, say if I get a Mortal Strike 2 seconds before the Blood Fury ends, the Mortal Strike will still go off. Or like the wound poison the wound poison wouldn't even go on. But even if you Mortal Strike me like 2 seconds left of the Orc Racial, then you can actually get rid of the healing reduction effect that way.
So they don't
It's
stack
really,
with each other, right? Because I was really confused. The other day, I was kind of doing what you said. I was like, oh, I'm a Blood Fury, so I can get the wound poison off. And then people in the chat were saying like, yo, it's stacked.